Hello everyone, we are continuing with simplifying complex fractions. So in the other video I posted today, you could check your answers to yesterday's assignment, the 1 through 6. All right, so go ahead, pause the video and copy down number 1. We don't have too many examples to do today. This is just where our complex fractions are going to start to look a little different than what they did from yesterday. Now, how this is different is I don't have two fractions or two terms that I'm adding or subtracting in the numerator or denominator. I actually just have one single fraction divided by another, and this becomes a lot easier than what we were doing yesterday. I could write it out horizontally. I could start with my first fraction and then write it out this way, divided by my bottom fraction, x plus y over 2x plus y. We know what to do with this. At the very beginning, this is what we started to do. We were multiplying and dividing rational expressions. In this case, I keep my first fraction the same, and then I multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. The only thing I want to do here now is to see if I can factor anything, and unfortunately, no, there's no GCF, there's no way to factor, so I'm going to keep parentheses around everything. And then we go straight to crossing out. So what's going to cross out here? The x plus y's. So I am left with 2x plus y over 2x minus y. Now remember here, these are not opposites. If I had a y minus 2x and a 2x minus y, then those would be opposites. These are not opposites. And that is our final answer. Now here's what's also going to look very different. We're going to come back to negative exponents. I know it's been a while since we looked at these. But let's recall what negative exponents are. So if I had an x to the negative third, it means to take the reciprocal. This becomes 1 over x cubed, 1 over x to the positive 3. So that's what I need to do first here. Rewrite everything so that there are no longer any negative powers. Now, because there's a minus here, I don't just move it to the bottom like I would if there happened to be a multiplication sign here. What I want to do is just rewrite each term. So this first one becomes 1 over x squared minus 1 over y squared. Same thing in our denominator. I'm going to get a 1 over x to the positive 1, or 1 over x, minus 1 over y. Now this looks like what we were doing yesterday. So now we determine the LCD, which in this case is going to be what? X can go into x squared, y can go into y squared. So we're looking at an x squared, y squared. So now as I distribute, the x squares will cross out or divide out, and I'm just left with a y squared. And then when I multiply my second fraction by this, the y squares are gone, so I just have a minus x squared. In our denominator, when I multiply the LCD by the first fraction, only one x will divide out, so I am left with still one x up here, and then a y squared. And then when I multiply this by 1 over y, same thing's going to happen with the y's, only one y is going to be gone. So I have a minus x squared times y. Now I do want to try to factor this. How I could factor the numerator, that's a difference of squares, so I'm going to get a y minus x and a y plus x. There's a GCF in our denominator of an xy. What's going to be left over? A y minus x. And we can see why we had to do that. The y minus x's cross out, and we're left with y plus x over xy. Okay, and then the last example we're going to do actually comes from today's worksheet. So this is number 2 off of today's worksheet. So go ahead and copy it down. And yes, this means if we're doing it now, you don't have to do it for homework. But it still looks a little different than what we just did. So if you notice, I have an x times y to the negative first. So if I were to rewrite this, the x would stay, the y would move to the bottom. So now up top, this becomes 1 minus x over y. And then in our denominator, that's very similar to what we just did. 1 over x minus 1 over y. And we'll continue with this problem. Our LCD is what? xy. So as I distribute, I'm going to get an xy, and then right here, the y's are gone. I'm going to end up with an x times x, so minus an x squared. Next, I have an xy times 1 over x, so that's a y. And then next, the y's are gone, so I get a minus x. I'm going to try to factor that numerator. If you notice there is a GCF of x, what's left? Y minus x. What's on the bottom? Y minus x. Those match perfectly. So we are just left with x. All right, so next Wednesday there's going to be a team quiz. No notes, but for my remote students, you will have you don't have to join Zoom for this. You could just work on your own throughout the day, and I'll post the due date and time for this. There's going to be 11 problems around 30 points. And it's going to consist of everything we've been doing so far. So it's just a nice little checkpoint. So to make sure you really know how to do these, you want to go back, you want to practice previous problems, you want to ask me questions. If you have questions about any homework assignment, any problems, you need to let me know. So this goes back to simplifying a single rational expression, multiply, divide, add, subtract rational expressions, also solve rational equations, and simplify complex fractions. Remember, it's the last two types. That's where we clear denominators. So today's assignment is 1 through 8. Again, we already did number 2, so you don't have to do that one. But go ahead and work on 1 through 8. This will be due Tuesday. Tuesday, we're just going to do a nice mixed review, getting you guys ready for the team assessment on Wednesday. So take care. Let me know if you have any questions.